listening to the Leadership Woman podcast with me, Jill Saville. Today, I'm very excited to welcome on the Leadership Woman podcast a young woman who actually I only connected with this week, but we can act quickly, we're spontaneous. Her name is Joy Bonsu Schmutz, and if I've not said that correctly, she can help. And we're going to talk today because she's the co-founder of an organization that is trying to help in the space of human trafficking. And the organization is called Abaye.
Abaye, yes. You tried.
I tried. Sometimes I get it right, sometimes I don't. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jill, and thanks. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm looking forward to this exciting conversation.
So am I. And I said to our mutual friend who put us in touch that you are just so aptly named. I don't know if I can say that, but Joy. Our conversation the other day was just so joyful. So I'm really looking forward to this. Let's begin with where you were born.
I was born in a town called Koforidua in the eastern region of Ghana to lovely parents, and I'm one of four. So I have three other siblings, a sister and two brothers. Growing up in Koforidua, it's quite a peaceful, not a hustle and bustle city. Very small town, few people, but great mountain, great view. So I think it was a great place to live growing up. I had the normal poetry recitals, kindergarten. My home was just like a few blocks away from home. And so we'd always walk to school. Usually we were late because we always thought school was close by. But for me, what stands out in my formative years was I started being exposed to leadership very early. So interestingly, my kindergarten and primary school had a student leadership program. I don't know what informed their decision, but as early as 5 years old, I was the class leader. And like this continued until grade 3. And at grade 3, going to grade 4, my classmates were like, okay, Joy, I think we've had enough of you since kindergarten. So they wanted to vote. It was actually an electoral process. You would nominate and then the class would vote for who they wanted to lead. And in grade 4, they said, no, Joy, we've had enough. Then in grade 5, they said, you know what? We think we want to come back for Joy. For me, that was very extraordinary in my formative years. And so it shaped me. I always would be at home. My parents would say, no, Joy, you are always bigger than yourself. When we talk about your age, we cannot compare it to the kind of things you instruct your parents to do, you instruct your siblings to do. And so for me, those are the things that have shaped me as a person and a leader today. Mm-hmm. So I think, and then maybe for the fun part of it, my big brother used to have a recording studio where we would always, go in there, record jingles, record music. And those were very fond memories. And I think exposure to the arts, also was a very interesting dynamic to my childhood.
You were a singer. Did you play any instruments as well?
Okay, so I had always wanted to play either the violin or the guitar. And luckily for me, guess what? When COVID hit and we were all locked down, I said, you know what? I think this is my moment. So here in France, just a year ago, I bought a guitar, I bought a violin, and I self-taught myself. I self-taught, the guitar, and I'm absolutely amazed that finally I can play the guitar.
It's as if when we've set our brains some goals, ultimately it finds a way to achieve them. And very quickly, when COVID locked down, you thought, oh, this is a great opportunity. What took you away from Ghana?
I look back at what decisions led me here. Mainly, I left a very good job in Ghana, came to study here in France because I always had the mindset of personal development. And because in my previous job, I had an opportunity to work in HR, which was a very spontaneous opportunity out of my engineering space. And then I said, no, if I'm going to do HR, then I'm going to do HR properly. So that's how come I left. Mainly to do my master's at Grenoble École de Management. So I was pursuing a career in human resources after, going through the journey of studying as an engineer. I had discovered a new passion, which I think really resonated with my personality. Instead of, interacting with the poles, with the wires, I came to find out that I was much, much, much better interacting with people.
What brought you to what you're doing now, this organization that you co-founded? Where did that come from?
So just a step back to university, when I was doing my bachelor's in engineering, for some reason, I've always had, this place in my heart to say that wherever I am, I need to make a difference. What's the problem that needs to be solved? It's like instinctively, it was just a trigger for me. And so in my second year in university, I gathered a couple of friends and I said, you know what, we could always find some orphanage somewhere and just go and serve them because we had a long weekend, no classes. Could we do that? And a couple of friends who shared the same vision with me said, okay, let's do that. So we found this town about an hour's drive from campus. And so we would do this on the weekend for 2 years. We were doing this every Sunday. We would go, we would provide them with computers. Usually we'll take our laptops with us and would train the children how to use the computers. We would send storybooks with our own pocket monies. It wasn't that much, but we would go sometimes take food along with us to, feed those kids. And so for 3 years of doing that, we saw a tremendous growth. Imagine kids who couldn't speak English. We were really hesitant. How are they going to learn to use Mavis Beacon to learn to type? But to our utmost surprise, when we introduced them, it was just as if it was wired inside of them. And so for me, what struck me was that sometimes all people need is just the opportunity, somebody who cares, and the opportunity to say that I'm going to do something out of these children. And surprisingly, we saw a very great impact in these children. And so when I started working after university, I started working in the telecom space. I had always dreamt, what is it that we could do, especially for communities? In Ghana, you have, well, I'm sure it spans across many countries, but we have solely relegated development of, our communities and societies to, it's the government, or we're looking to somebody to come and implement a developmental initiative. And so when I saw what we did with the limited resources that we had, it really struck a chord that we could set up an organization that was going to promote sustainable development, leveraging on technology, because we saw how technology had quickly brought these kids up to speed using the computer to learn and use the internet. And so we decided to start, something. But it was just around that time when my husband, who had been studying in the UK, returned, and he had an experience with some survivors of human trafficking. So we sat down and he said, Joy, we could do something with, the passion and the tools and the skills we have in digital to solve this problem, or to provide some avenue for victims of human trafficking. So for me, immediately, the empathy side of me, because I always feel like if I was the one who was taken out of my country, without my will, or against my will, to somewhere to work in a situation where I don't agree with, how would I feel? And so I always think about that when I'm doing anything. So that really sparked in this organization inside. And we said it's a vision. So we just, came together with our skills. We got a couple of friends who had the software engineering expertise, and we designed this software, this platform called Traffic Alerts that is supposed to help us gather data in the African space, because we had seen that there was that lack also of tracking, reported cases in Africa. And to use the power of AI, artificial intelligence, to be able to predict because our goal was really, what can we do to stop this entirely? Because we know governments and law enforcement are doing their best to go after perpetrators, but what could we do to give them a helping hand to eventually bring an end to this horrid criminality called human trafficking? So we said, if we could provide a tool that could predict where the next hotspot is, or where are the groups or the clusters of these things happening across our country and beyond, then it could give them insights and foresights into what they could do and where to put their resources, rather than a goose chase of someone reporting and we hunting the person down. And so that is what started Traffic Alerts. And that was the birth of Abe Innovation Studio. And we haven't just focused on human trafficking, anything that would touch on, sustainability, but we want to use technology to provide those solutions, is what we have been doing over the last 3 years.
Oh, wow, there was such a lot there. And it's interesting. One of the previous people on the podcast, Angela Brucci, she was approaching the human trafficking from the point of view of how can we help survivors after the event.
Yeah.
And doing a really good job with them, powerful. And you're coming at it from trying to prevent it in the first place, trying to aid the police. And one thing that I think crime enforcement places, that they're supposed to try to be joined up, but they're not always joined up. So they can have an incident here and an incident there. And yes, what I'm hearing is you can put all that together.
Yeah.
So you were going on to say then that it's not just about human trafficking, it's also about sustainability. So talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, Jill, so I mean, the term sustainable development, today we hear it everywhere we go. And some people even think, it's one of those things. But in our understanding of sustainable development is, in the next 10 years, what we are doing today should not cause the future generations to suffer, whether it's with resources, whether it's with the human being itself. And so if you think about human trafficking, if today, in the 2016 report of the ILO, they said 40 million people were trafficked in a year. 40 million people, and 70% of them were women and girls. So in 10 years' time, if nothing is done to stop this, the perspective of who a woman is, even in the eyes of boys, in the eyes of men, could have a serious impact on how women even evolve in the next 10 years. So I'm looking at 10 years, my children seeing women as, empowered, women as leaders. Women are not commodities to be sold and resold, just like, anything you could buy from the supermarkets. So it's not just resources, like we talk about climate, we talk about the ocean, trying to make sure that the ocean is still, viable for the next generations to come. We talk about mining practices, ensuring that we don't degrade the land because we need to dig out our gold. And so in the next 10 years, the land will be totally inhabitable. So it's these mindsets or this kind of vision that we have to say that, what could we do to ensure that a lot of the things that we touch is sustainable, and when our children inherit it from us, it's in a better form or it's in a better state than we handled it. So that is where, from our perspective, the sustainable development comes in.
You were saying about leadership from a very early age. This, and sometimes it comes from an expectation, doesn't it? I think our development, if much is expected of us, then we tend to live into it. And maybe you at the age of 5 being expected to be a class leader, put that in your mind to develop into it. And also you said phrases like, you want to ensure that what we do today doesn't harm the future in 10 years, and that you don't want men and boys to see women as commodities. I mean, these are all very, very worthy things that speak to my heart too. Is there anything else that you were doing at the moment that maybe I've not asked you about?
So under Abbey Innovation Studios, we have picked out certain key areas that fall under the UN Sustainable Development Goals, mainly because we want our efforts to kind of, converge somewhere and make an impact globally. So as we were working on the human trafficking project, around last year when there was, the height of the lockdown, everybody was working remotely, and we decided to open a volunteer program because we needed some, skills, but we couldn't, afford the skills that we needed. So we said, okay, people are home, schools are closed, why not? And so we put, a job ad out there. We were really looking for about 5 people. And we turned it in 10, showed up that 500 people across the world applied for these roles. I was like, okay, okay, what did they read? What did they see? So immediately it sends a big message to me that, Joy, people were looking and reading what you were doing, and it was making meaning to them. So immediately we re-strategized and said, you know what? Let's have a 6 months volunteer program. 3 months, 6 months, those who were ready to go for 3, those who were ready to go for 6. And so we did massive recruitments digitally, and we had 40 volunteers on board from 10 different countries. And some of them included women that were on career breaks. And that will lead me to one of the biggest initiatives that we're doing at Abbey Innovation Studio. I mean, the intercultural, international feel, working as a young leader. I just started my company, and then I had to manage a team of 40. My HR manager was in California. By the time I'm going to bed, she's now awake, and she'll send a message, Joy, when you're bright and awake, then you can read this message. I had a team member in Germany, all over the world. And so it was a big boost for me, and to realign my leadership skills to embrace an international, kind of workforce. And it was also good for my HR career as well, because I had to build a talent management plan. I had to build a development plan, because I didn't want these volunteers to come and feel like, oh, I gave them my time and then I got nothing in return, but it was successful. And so working with some of the women who were on career breaks, one lady who was in the US was waiting to get her papers to work. And so she said, why not, join the team to do some work? And the passion, the extreme, commitment she had and, demonstrated to the work she did, it just immediately, and probably that was an isolated case until we had a partnership specialist who came on board, and she was also at home for 3 years raising her kids. And I just saw the pattern. I was like, what's going on here? These women should have been the most, relaxed and, laid back, because, they hadn't been working in the traditional space for a while, but they had so much light in their eyes, enthusiasm. It was so breathtaking. So I said, you know what, let's sit together. I think that I've always wanted to do a women's initiative, something to empower women, but I never really found which niche I wanted to, focus it on. So I spoke to them, and they came up with the idea. They came up with a plan that we could do a women's program that focused on women on career breaks. And so we started the SheRock Female Accelerator program. And this year happens to be the 2nd year, and we've touched over 100 women from almost like 7 countries in Africa and given them digital skills training for in a period of 6 weeks. So they come, we expose them to digital marketing and all of that stuff. And then at the end, we push their CVs to possible employers and say, hey, they've got new skills. So give them a chance in your mid-career internship program. We ourselves employed 2 of them. And I must say, it's been phenomenal. I've had people ask me, oh, Joy, are you doing this program because you've been on a career break yourself? The same with the human trafficking. Are you doing this program because you've been a survivor or a family member? And I always say, we don't need to have gone through something in order to, provide solutions or be there for people in that scenario. And that is what we call empathy. Just think about yourself in that scenario. What would I do if I had to go on a break to raise my family and no employer saw my CV as worthy? So giving these women the chance, and I would just call on one particular lady we employed. We say, okay, can you come on a part-time program, with us? Just come and do, reach out to partners. And so we did an intensive digital skills training while she was working with us. And in a year, it's been a year since she started with us. She does digital marketing. She manages CRM softwares. And she was at home for 9 years, taking care of her 3 beautiful children. And so 1, empathy. 2, everybody deserves a chance. Sometimes you need to look beyond the technical, qualifications, because she said, Joy, which employer is going to bet on my CV? 9 years of being at home, who is going to bet on me? But I'm glad that I took the chance. We gave her the opportunity and she's forever grateful. Yes. So She Rock is one of the biggest things that I am really proud of.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And I would be really proud of that. And you were moving then into, I think, things that you wanted people to take away. I heard empathy. Yeah. And it's interesting. I once said to somebody that actually when there's a homeless person sat on the street, I could be behind their eyes and imagine what it's like to be there. And can't you? And this person said, no. What are you talking about? So that was really strange. And I thought, okay, maybe not.
Yeah.
But I do believe that empathy is what we need to answer some of the huge questions, find some of the solutions today. So this is empathy, sitting in somebody's shoes. You don't have to be a survivor. You don't have to have gone through something in order to make a difference in the world, if I'm saying that.
Absolutely.
That's your first message. The second message was talking about giving people a chance, like this woman who'd been at home for 9 years. Everybody deserves a chance. Is that right? And so what's the third thing that you want people to hear?
For, I think last year, I took a test. So I don't know those who are familiar with the Tapey Colors process communication model.
Oh, I am. I'm a trained coach, and yes.
Oh my God.
Yes, I'm a trainer for them. Goodness,
awesome,
okay.
Because I took that assessment last year, and I am a promoter. That was my category, the red, and. For me, so promoter, the goal-oriented person, the adaptable personality, but mainly the goal-oriented person, which I think I took from my mom. Everybody around me, when you come and you tell me, Joy, I have this great idea. I've been thinking of doing this. I'm like, what do you need to get started? Like, let's just start. Let's just start it, because just like I think the car, it takes a lot of, momentum to get it started. But when you get started, it's like, zooming away. So I've always been, from my childhood, I push people to get things started. And so, Jill, when I was listening to your very initial podcast, when you said, I've been thinking about doing this, so I just set a date, I said, exactly my point. And, I listened to a couple of podcasts and they've been so inspiring to me. I've learned a lot from your guests that have come on the show. So if imagine you're still thinking about it, so a lot of people think too hard about how you're going to sustain the dream. At the Innovation Studio, we said, just set a date. She-Rock, we said, just set a date. And I think for my personality, the reason I mentioned the Taby Color, PCM model was that the moment I set a date, it's as if every energy in me just like focuses on that goal, because I just don't feel like I can miss that goal. So for me, I feel people need people like me in their lives to say, keep it going, just get started, set a date. And someone would say the whole universe will conspire to help you, get your first, podcast in, get your first business going. So I just want to encourage everyone who's listening and, has some idea they've thought of for the last 5-10 years, just set a date and then just get it started. You could post it online and say, I'm starting my podcast on the 4th or on the 3rd.
Absolutely. I remember when I decided I was going to speak on stage at the John Maxwell team, and I thought, what would keep me going to go through this horrendous process, because you had to keep recording yourself, you had to make it exactly 3 minutes and keep getting critiqued, which was quite uncomfortable. And so the first thing I did was put it in the Facebook group of the John Maxwell team with thousands of people and say, I'm going to be on that stage. And of course, that kept me going.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So, I think that phenomenally, I have seen that this works. If you set a date and, you tell someone about it, some way, somehow you'll be pushed to get it started. And the energy you require to keep it going is a lot more lower. People think that it's a lot more to keep it going than to get it started. So
one story that you've left out?
So one story that I'd left out was after a year after I'd left the community, I'd left school, I was taking a stroll in my neighborhood. And I saw a young girl approaching me on the street. Then all of a sudden, I noticed she was running. I was like, oh, what's going on here? So as she drew closer, I began to recognize her. Then she came and gave me a big hug. And I was like, what on earth are you doing here? So this was one of the girls who used to be in the orphanage back where we used to go for years, giving them food and all of that. And she said, I have been adopted by, an auntie's friend, and have moved to this neighborhood to start school. And I am so excited to see you, because anytime you used to come back to the village, it's like something, the joy that all the kids felt, so being able to experience that moment, oh my God, it was amazing. It was amazing. And this is just one out of the 70 children that we had been with for years. So I count it a blessing, to be able to serve.
It certainly was a blessing to be able to serve. Thank you for adding that. So wonderful. Thank you for those 3 takeaways. I'm feeling a little bit guilty because you said, how so people are interested in these stories? And I'm thinking, I waited about 7 months before I even started. But anyway, never mind. I did start ultimately. So thank you so much, Joy, for being a guest on the Leadership Woman podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Jill, for having me. I think it's been an absolute pleasure. An absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. EA. So you can probably do an E and A. Abaye.
Abaye. Abaye.
Yeah.
I'm about to get it.